Hey YouTube, it's Papa Shango here again, and through the magic of YouTube, it's a week later from the last video I shot, and I couldn't finish the project for my sump pump because I had other things I had to get done around the house, so I didn't get a chance to do that. Anyway, I'm back again this week, and I'm going to try to finish this project and show you what I'm doing, and hopefully this is going to help you out and prevent any future damage to your basements, because as I said before, $45,000 to get our basement fixed. Insurance took care of it. Thank you, insurance, for doing so, but still, you don't want to be put out like that. So I'm hoping this is a solution that will fix this issue for many people. So my goal today is not only to get the whole thing hooked up, but my hurdle that I have to jump is I have to get that half-inch hose through the outlet pipe, which is going to have to cross the room which the sump pump is in, which is only about 4 feet maybe, and then it's going to cross across the living room, which is down in the basement. That's about another 15 feet, and then it's going to have to climb a wall, which is going to end up being about 6 feet up the wall, which would put it about 2 feet below the outlet outside. It's extremely cold here this weekend. We have a wind chill temperature of about -40. If you're wondering what that means in Fahrenheit, because here in Canada we're Celsius, it's -40 in Fahrenheit. So it's extremely cold, but there's people up here right now that are experiencing temperatures as high as -67. So I'm hoping those people are staying warm and staying inside and not going outside for nothing, because temperatures like that, you walk out in something like that and your lungs will freeze up and you can feel them freezing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try a process in order to get that hose through the system, which is under the basement floor, across and then halfway up that wall. And how I'm going to do that is I thought of many different ways, and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to get a pull line through the entire outlet system, hook the end of the hose to it, and just pull it all the way through as far as I need it to go. And once I get it all the way through, then I'll just pull it back down the wall to the point where I need it to be. So let's set that up, and we'll get back at you. Okay. All right, step one, I got to get that line through that pipe. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach a vacuum to it up here on the top end. Let's go take a look at that. As you can see, you don't even need much. That's my little Stinger vacuum there that I use there in the garage. Small, compact. And you can see I just got the hose with a rag tightened up here at the top. So I'm just going to turn that on and let it do the work for me. Okay, so here we are in the basement. I'm going to show you what I've done, what I'm planning on doing, and some of the things that I've done to help prevent anything like this happening again. So here's my sump pump in this little storage area, and you'll have to forgive the lighting. So it's down there, and I've got some water in there. I got this string on here because what I did is I took another pump. That I put down in there with a float, and when I pull this string, I pull that float up, that pump will start pumping water out of this hose, and then I just run that hose for just emergency purposes over there to the laundry room and down the pipe for the laundry. Okay, so I don't know if you can hear that or not, but there is air definitely blowing down here. So I can get a shot of that. There's the outlet down here. So that's where I'm going to send that pipe up. It's right down in there. These are all the fixings for my other pump. Now I don't know if you can be able to see this one either. It's a little dark. Let's see if I can. It's not even a good shot, so it's useless. But what that is right there is a Burkham municipal pump, which I use as a backup. And basically, what it does is it uses the water system to form a suction, which pumps the water out. And that pipe goes up here to that gauge through this, and back to my water system. So that's my secondary backup, and then right there, you can see it, that is my third float in there, which is for this Burkham water alarm up here. So if my sump pump fails, it goes past the first float, it goes to the second float, which is my Burkham municipal pump, which is on this pipe here. And you can look all this stuff up. And if that pump fails, then it goes to my third float, which is right there, and it sets off that alarm, which is loud enough to wake up the entire house, including the neighbors. And then we come running, and I throw that emergency pump down there with this hose and that outlet over there. That outlet over there, and I get the water out of here before I get another flood, which is what I had to do this last time. So what I want to do is show you what's happening. So as you can see, got that right there. I've got that outlet, and it's running to the outside, and it's going to go under this floor, and I'm going to back up here. And basically across that room and up that wall, that's the outside wall. So what we need to do is we need to run a pull line, so I can pull that hose that I showed you earlier up through there. So I'll get that ready. Okay, so this is what I got. I got some handy dandy pull line here, and your typical plastic bag that you probably got a billion of these laying around or in a cabinet somewhere in a box. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to send this line under the floor across the room, up the wall, and outside to that vacuum. So let's see what happens when I try this. This is the first time I'm trying it, so we're going to see what happens. See if I can put the camera here where I can see what's going on. first try. It's not going to work. It's too big. Let's make it smaller. Okay, let's give it a shot. We're going to take this with some pull line and send it right on up the tube. Just like that. Get it going. Okay, so I'm back out here, and my vacuum sounds really, really high. So let's see if I got it. And there it is. And there it is. That's what I wanted. I wanted to pull that through. Excellent. Thank you, vacuum. Okay. Phase 2. You got to get that hose up there. Okay, YouTube, so what I did was I looped that string. I looped it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull that loop all the way up through this pipe, and that way I have 2 strings sticking out on this end. And that's why I want it, and I'll show you why later, why I want 2 strings sticking out of this end. So I'm just going to come down here, and I'm going to pull it through right there. So I'm going to pull that through, and then we should have some success here. So as you can see here, I've got my end cap here with my vinyl tubing, and I'm sending it through, I don't know if you can see that or not, through that T that I created. And there's my sump pump right there, and I'm going to put that in between the 2 of these. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually push this cap up into the end there where the tube's coming out, and that will seal that end of it. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. Here's, once again, my end cap, vinyl tubing. I put a clamp on that just to make sure it never comes off. It's going to go into the end of this T that I made, which is then going to go to my outlet pipe there. Now, mind you, once this is done, I have it this way, but it's going to be the orientation is actually going to be downward, so the water will run out and back into the pit. So there we have it. I'll hook that up. Okay, folks, here we are. This is the unit it's in, and you can see down there. There's my outlet pipe right there. There's my original setup, and I know I was going to show you this, but what that is, right there, you'll see it right down there. That is a municipal pump. So what I've got in here is I've got up here my my alarm, which is plugged in, which goes down to that float, which is right back there. I don't know if you can see that or not. So I've got that alarm that's going to that float. So it's a 3-step thing. My sump pump is obviously down there submerged. I collected some water here over the last week or so. We had some pretty frigid temperatures, so I didn't work on this. So my pump's down there, so its float is lowest. When it's triggered, it pumps the water out. If that pump does not trigger, then I've got this float here. And this float is my municipal pump. And it's triggered, and then it will begin to flow water from my water system down here. And that water will form a vacuum and then suck the water out. That's what this other secondary tube is going to. That's going to that pump there. and it'll suck the water that's in the tank out through vacuum pressure. Okay, and the third float that gets risen is that alarm float. So if both pumps fail, this float will trigger, and you'll hear that alarm. And then we come running. And we start the whole thing over again, trying to figure out how we can get this to work. So, I guess we're here at what one would call the moment of truth. And I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to pump this, I'm going to pump this water out. The check valve should catch any remaining water, and I don't even know if there's even enough water in this tank to even do it, but if there is not enough water in the tank to see if we get water coming back out of there, down there, then I guess I'll just have to just trust that it's going to work. As I said, that tube is about halfway up the wall, which should be below the soil surface, which should keep the water far enough away from the freezing temperature so I won't get water frozen there at the top anymore. So I guess it's the moment of truth. And there it goes. And there's my water coming back out. It's dripping out. Tank's still emptying. And there's the water that's in the top of that pipe. It's running back down in there. And it'll drain back in there until it gets down to that level, which should be about halfway down that wall. There it is. Okay, so we're back. We're going to do a quick little overview of what I did to get the lines through my outlet pipes to the outside, from the sump pump to the outside, and how I ran that hose up. Because, of course, I'm trying to film it while I'm trying to do it, so I wasn't sure if it was being very clear. So what I did is I've rigged up a little model of my sump pump line. So this area is where my sump pump is. This is the outlet to the outside. Now you saw the portion of the video where I used a plastic bag to run this line up through here, which worked perfect. So what I want to show you is down on this end, what I did is I put a knot on this end of the line. And my plan was you're going to take that knot, and what you're going to do is you're going to get another line that's more than twice the length you're going to need to get it to the outside. And what you want to do is you want to run an end of that line up through here, through that loop that we made, and take the other end of it, and you're going to put a knot there. So now that loop is holding this double line. I'm going to set this down for a moment and just quickly put a knot here. And now the reason you want to put, well, I want to put the knot that I'm creating here so I've got that knot in that line, but what I want to do is I want to put that knot next to the loop. On the line that's coming out of the pipe. So it's going to be like that. And the reason why I want to do that, it will be apparent once I do that. So I've got that line there, and then of course this line's down here in the sump pump. So I'm up here at the top, and I'm going to pull that line through. So now I've got that double line sticking out here at the bottom, which is down in my sump pump. At the top outside, I've got the other end of that line sticking out up here. So I've got one big loop that's going through the whole thing. Now this is the part where it comes into play. On my vinyl tubing that I ran inside the pipe, what I did is I put a hole through it. Now I used a leather punch to do it because you want a nice solid round hole. My father-in-law taught me this. And because you don't want one like this. I don't know if you can see it. What I did is I just notched that with a knife. But because of it's got these edges to it, it can be torn very easily. You don't want to do that and start from scratch. I just did it just for this video because I didn't want to run and grab the leather punch again. But a nice round hole, or use a drill bit will work too, and you don't have to use one that big. You just need it big enough for what I'm about to show you. So what I did is I take and I put my hole in it. Now I'm using this zip tie here, and this is a fairly big zip tie, but you can use a small zip tie and just make the hole big enough for the zip tie to get through. But once again, it's very important that you make that hole a round hole, not a cut hole or anything where you can tear this off as you're pulling it through. So you're going to run the zip tie through that hole like so, and then on your loop that's sticking out downstairs in your sump pump, you're just going to zip tie this around that loop. Like so. So once you've got that zip tied around that loop, and this is where you're going to need some help probably, you're going to guide this through as somebody at the top is pulling it. So as you're pulling it, you might want somebody to just kind of nudge it along as you're pulling it. Now, I had two 90-degree bends. I came through my sump area, my sump basin, across underneath the concrete floor to a 90-degree angle that was in the wall, and then it goes straight up the wall to a 90-degree angle that goes to the outlet outside. So when you hit that first 90 degree, you're going to feel it. You're going to feel some resistance, and that's where you're going to get your partner to kind of help nudge it past that point as you're pulling it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this one through. So I pulled it through to the point. Once it gets past the first 90 degree, you're going to feel it. It's going to get past, and it's going to get easy to pull again. Once you get to the second 90 degree, you're going to feel that resistance, and you're going to just stop right there. That means you're at the top at the wall. And I don't know if you can see in there or not, but you can kind of maybe see just the white of that zip tie right there. There we go. So I pulled that through. This is why we use the zip tie. Because what I want to do, because this is right there, of course, yes, you can cut it, but on my sump pump, my outlet, we're talking that was at least 1.5 feet back, I believe, into the wall, maybe about a foot, a little less. So there's no way you're going to get to that zip tie unless you absolutely pull it around that 90 degree and then pull it all the way through. I didn't want to deal with that, so what I did is I just took my double line here. And what you do is, because you don't want to, I didn't want to leave the line in there. I don't know if it would affect it or not, but I didn't want to leave the line. I'm just going to cut one of them. So now I've got one in and my cut in. And I'm just going to pull the one in that's good. And it's just going to slip right out of that zip tie. Now I know that I'm at the top of that 90 degree. So I'll go back down to the basement, and then I'm going to add a little bit, of course, for the T, the modified T that I created. but I want that to be about 2 feet below the surface. So what I did is I pulled this line back about 4 feet. And that's what I did there. And then I cut it off, just so I can make that bend in my T. So that's how I did the procedure to get that tube up inside of the pipe. And this is on my little mini contraption that I built here. As you saw in the video, it pumped the water out. And yes, there was water backflowing in there, but that's okay. Because water's going to go any source, any way out it can pick. The bulk of the water went outside. Anything after the pump stopped pumping, the check valve closed down at the pump, and any water that was above the height of this vinyl tubing in here ran right back down that vinyl tubing and back into the tank. What does that all mean? To sum it up, it means that there's no water that the check valve is holding all the way up here to the 90-degree bend. And when I reach temperatures of -20, -30, -45, if we recently had, in some areas, people were getting -67. Unbelievable. But you won't get that water sitting there because of the check valve, and then lo and behold, you get a chunk of ice in that line that's blocking it, and then all of a sudden you've got a flood because the sump pump can't pump that water out because that ice is blocking it. So using that second line inside of the pipe so it's less invasive, no construction work to be done. The water that is, when the check valve closes, the water that is above up here to the 90-degree bend will run all the way back down through that second tube back into the tank until it reaches the top of that second tube, which mine is about 2 feet below the surface outside, the soil surface, which means it's more likely it will never ever freeze up on me again. So I hope this video will help some people out there. This was 4 years for me trying to figure this out, and without having to tear up my walls and stuff. So I hope this helps. It's a pretty easy job, can probably be done in as little as, I'd say as little as 2.5 hours at the most. All you're going to be doing is maybe doing a little bit of cutting depending on how your sump pump's installed. I had a little bit of a head start because I used those rubber fittings like this, the straight ones and that T, and I still am a firm believer, an absolute firm believer that saved my butt. Those rubber T's, because those popped off the pipes before the pipes burst. I feel if I had installed it using nothing but pipes and solid pipe all the way through in the glue, I feel that something at some point or another would have burst open, and it would have been bad. Now there is a weep hole on sump pumps. Sometimes there's a weep hole that will help prevent. But when you get up into a higher horsepower pump, like I do, I have a pretty high horsepower pump. That weep hole don't help because it didn't help in my case. But fortunately, these rubber fittings, they just popped right off, and I didn't have a pipe burst in the tank, which happened the first time, down the line under the concrete, which would have been horrible, or in the wall, which would have caused tons of damage. So thanks for coming along on this little trip. I hope this helps people who have the same situation that I do, and we'll see you out there. Bye now.